Ba 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 bum bum ba 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 da. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born into the treasurer's family, and growing up was made the treasurer, being called Treasurer Little. A wise and clever man he was, with a keen eye for signs and omens. On his way to wait on the king, the treasurer saw a dead rat on the side of the road and exclaimed,
Any decent young man with his wits about him has only to pick up this dead rat, and he might start a business and keep a wife.
His words were overheard by a good man from a poor family, who said,
That's a man who always has a reason for what he says.
and accordingly he picked up the dead rat, which he sold at the nearest tavern for a small amount of money. With the small sum of money, our hero got molasses and took drinking water in a pot. He gave this concoction to some passing flower gatherers who were returning from the forest. They repaid him with a handful of flowers, which he then sold for 8 pennies. Later, one rainy and windy day, the wind blew down a quantity of rotten branches and boughs into the king's garden. The king's gardener did not see a way to clear them. However, our hero offered his services if the wood and leaves might be his. The gardener agreed on the spot. Suddenly, a plan came to mind. Our hero bribed some children at a local playground and asked them to clear every branch and bough and pile them by the entrance to the garden. The gardener paid our hero a large sum of money for his services. The next day he went to the city gate with a jar full of water and supplied 500 mowers with water to drink. They said, "You've done us a good turn, friend. What can we do to you?" He replied, "Oh, I'll tell you when I want your aid." And he struck up intimacy with a land trader and a sea trader. The land trader said to him, "Tomorrow there will be to town a horse dealer with 500 horses to sell." On hearing this news, he said to the mowers, "I want each of you today to give me a bundle of grass and not sell your own grass till mine is sold." "Certainly," they said, and they delivered 500 bundles of grass at his house. Unable to get grass for his horses elsewhere, the dealer purchased our friend's grass for over 1,000 pieces. Only a few days later, his sea trading friend brought him news of the arrival of a large ship in port, and another plan struck our hero. He hired for 8 pence a well-appointed carriage, which went with him in great style to the dock. He also brought with him a large entourage to convince people that he was a powerful and successful merchant with lots of business connections. Using this display of power, our hero bought the ship on credit and deposited his signet ring as security. He then told his friends to show all of the merchants into his presence when they arrived. Hearing that the ship had arrived in port, about 100 merchants came down to buy the cargo, only to be told they could not have it as a great merchant had already made the payment on his account. Each man and woman of the 100 gave him thousands of pieces to buy a share of the ship, and then a further 1,000 each to buy him out altogether. So it was with 200,000 pieces that this pupil of Treasurer Little returned to Benares. Treasurer Little exclaimed,
How did you come by all this wealth?
Well, in 4 short months, I just followed your advice, sir.
Tell me more.
The pupil began his long tale from the dead rat all the way to the merchant ship. And upon hearing all of this, the treasurer exclaimed,
I must see that a young man of these parts does not fall into anyone else's hands.
So the treasurer married his own grown-up daughter to the young man, and upon the treasurer's death, the pupil became the treasurer in that city.
And kiss!